Al Radwan, Minister Plenipotentiary at the Cabinet of the Minister of Foreign Affairs in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And last but not least, our moderator, Dr. Comfort Ero, CEO and President of the International Crisis Group.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us in this afternoon session. And ministers, really great to have you all on the stage with us this afternoon to focus on what is surely on everybody's mind, the Gaza reckoning, reassessing global responsibilities and our pathways to peace as well. We have 45 minutes, a number of important questions that we want to get through. I mean, it's almost 2 months since the bombs have largely, though not completely, stopped falling on Gaza, which this moment offers us a crucial time to reflect on not only the war, but the development of the last 2 months and then what happens after. And nobody needs reminding, but we should remind ourselves of just the painful cost of the war in terms of human lives lost. 70,000 dead is the most estimation, and the lives of 2 million already shattered. And the regional order has been largely transformed, with violence reverberating, even in this peaceful city capital of Doha has felt the rippling effects of the war in Gaza as well. Now, ministers, while it's true that fighting has paused in Gaza, there is still the wider conflict to deal with as well. And I want to do something that I think is really important and very good that Doha has put it on the agenda, is to shine a spotlight on us, the so-called international community, and the role of the international community in this particular conflict. You know, we often use the role of we often use this terminology, international community, as though there's a community of states, community of organizations, community of leaders, like-minded, who are striving towards the same goal. But I think also I'm hoping for honesty as to why. I think a lot of people would say there have been moments of glaring failure in how the international community has been handling the Gaza crisis as well. So I would like us, as far as possible, to really be able to zoom in on what, frankly, do we mean by the international community in a day and age of the horrors that we've been watching in Gaza. So I'm going to ask you all to start with one question I'd like to put to all of you, and then I'll zoom in specifically on each of you to answer a further question. So, as I said, Minister Alvarez, let me start with you, sir. We have now 2 months into the conflict and into what a lot of people are describing as President Trump's 20-point plan, as enshrined most recently in the Security Council resolution that yourselves and a number of other states were pursuing. Now, as I was listening to you this morning with the Prime Minister discussing, the plan is now stuck between a prolonged, I think you'll agree, a prolonged phase 1 and a stalled phase 2. At least that's the way in which, that's my conclusion from what the Prime Minister was saying this morning. What specific things do you think each one of you, be great to get a sense of what are the specific things that you think should happen over the next 2 months to make sure that we don't get stuck in this no war, no peace situation? And let me start with you first, Minister.
I think we have a glimpse of hope at this moment, but we really have to move very quickly to go to phase 2, and that goes through consolidating the ceasefire. It is unacceptable that we have a ceasefire that is permanently being violated. We continue having every week several dozens of innocent Palestinians being killed. This has to stop. We need massive humanitarian assistance to be able to enter to the Gaza Strip, and we have to put UN agencies at the heart and at the center of the distribution that must be done with impartiality and independence. And we must make sure that the people of Gaza, as anyone else in the world, have normal and regular access to food. Secondly, we have to make sure that very quickly, in any transitional institution, body, entity, we have the Palestinian Authority at the center and at the heart. We cannot think about the future of the Middle East, the future of Gaza, not having the Palestinians at the heart of everything we do. And as the international community, we have to make sure, we have to help the UN and the Palestinian National Authority to be at the center. Same thing when it comes to reconstruction. And finally, we focus on Gaza because there is where the war is still going on. But let's not forget about the West Bank. We need also the violence of the settlers to stop and to make sure that we continue sufficiently funding the Palestinian Authority, because there is the real risk of financial collapse of the Palestinian Authority, and that would be a catastrophe for the Palestinian people and for the whole Middle East.
Thank you for bringing that link between Gaza and the West Bank. Minister, can I just push a little bit further, because from watching from the outside in, it looks as though that the UN is playing a secondary role, that it doesn't have that traditional leading role that we normally expect from the United Nations, not the Security Council, but the UN itself, to play the role that you are suggesting that it can play. So how do you see the UN being brought in a more sort of legitimate way than it is currently playing?
I think that the real risk that we have right now is duplicity. On once creating entities and bodies that would do what the UN has been doing for decades. Very specifically, UNRWA, that is an indispensable body for the future of millions of Palestinians everywhere. We have to uphold it. It's too secondary right now. We have to bring it at the center of the table. And the same thing, if the Palestinian Authority has already things or entities that have been working, let's not make duplication of them. Let's use them for training the police, for water, for justice. Very simple things, but that can be the very first layer of a future Palestinian state.
Thank you very much. Foreign Minister Abdelati, I see you're taking notes there, but the ministers put a spotlight on the Palestinian Authority, and Egypt, for example, has been taking sort of a leading role in the efforts to stand up a Palestinian technocratic committee to manage the Gazan affairs in the near term as well. But there's still a lack of clarity about their role vis-a-vis and their relationship vis-a-vis the Board of Peace, and we're still waiting for the formal announcement of that Board of Peace as well. But how do you see the relationship between that Palestinian technocratic committee, especially when you listen to Minister Alvarez? How do you see the relationship between them and the Board of Peace?
Well, first of all, I would like just to subscribe to what my dear friend Jose mentioned about our priorities now. We have to consolidate the ceasefire, to move forward as soon as possible to the second phase of the Trump peace plan, and as he correctly mentioned, to flood Gaza with all humanitarian and medical aid, and to prepare for the early recovery and the reconstructions of Gaza, because winter is already coming and people are suffering, no shelters. There is nothing left there in Gaza due to the Israeli systematic destructions. As for your question, according to Security Council Resolution 2803, there are 3 transitional bodies. Stabilization Force and the Technical Administrative Palestinian Committee. And I would like to stress the fact they are all transitional, temporary entities. Their mandate, according to the Security Council resolution, should be ended by 31st of December 2027.
Yeah.
As for the Board of Peace, we are waiting now, for the formulation of the board and, of course, its mandate. And this is very, very important. And from our point of view, its main mandate should be the channeling and mobilizing more funds for the early recovery and the reconstructions of Gaza, and of course monitoring those funds, where to be spent and so on. As for the International Stabilization Force, we need to deploy this force as soon as possible on the ground, because one party, which is Israel, is every day violating the ceasefire and claiming that the other side is the one who is violating. So we need monitors. We need international forces to be deployed alongside what's so-called the yellow line, in order to verify and to monitor the upholding of the ceasefire. The mandate should be, from our point of view, of a peacekeeping rather than peace enforcing, you know, and this is very, very important issue. The third body is, the Technocratic Administrative Committee. This is very important. The Palestinians, they should run their own affairs, and they are capable to do so. And of course, this body should take care of the daily life of the people, the basic services, including law enforcement, including provided judicial, policing, healthcare, you name it. Everything related to the basic services of the people in Gaza should be run by this technocratic administrative committee, till the Palestinian Authority will be empowered and will be deployed in Gaza. We have to pinpoint the fact that Gaza and the West Bank are an integral part of the independent Palestinian state, and this is very important. Separation or disengagement is not an option at all. Secondly, Gaza, we cannot afford dividing Gaza. Gaza is one unified party, and we should keep it like that in connection with the West Bank, as I mentioned. And finally, we should operate all the crossings. Israel has 5 crossings with Gaza, and as occupying power, they should open all the crossings to allow the flow of humanitarian and medical aid into Gaza. As for Rafah crossing, as you all know, it's working, it's open 24/7 from the Egyptian side. The problem is from the other side, because the Israelis are closing the Rafah crossing from Gaza side, and we are insisting, and this is a red line for us, that the Rafah crossing will not be a gate for displacement or for putting people out of their homeland. There is no ethical or moral justification to displace the Palestinians. It's their homeland, and they should be there. Only we can allow those who are injured and they need medical assistance from outside, they can leave, and those who finish their medical assistance and their medical treatment, they should go back to Gaza, to their homeland. So it should work, as I mentioned, from the 2 directions. Otherwise, it will be impossible. And again, it's not going to be a gateway for displacement. It's only for flooding Gaza with humanitarian and medical aid.
Minister, I don't disagree with anything that you said, but because you've raised it yourself about Rafah and about the humanitarian needs and what you want to see Israel do, then let me press you a little bit more about Egypt's own role, because we've watched, over time, it's a historical fact that there's been a tendency for Israel to offload Gaza onto you, but in response, Egypt has wanted to make sure that Israel is seen as the accountable occupying force, and then has to play that role in managing the situation in Gaza. But things have changed fundamentally in the last 2 years that also put a burden back onto Cairo in terms of the role that you have to play in not distancing yourself from the realities that are confronting Gaza, but playing a more forceful, playing a more assertive role into Gaza, one that really shows that you are not going to stand by to allow people to be forcefully displaced, but you are going to take a firmer stand. What does that look like practically within the context of the resolution, within the context of the Board of Peace, and within the context of the Technocratic Committee as well?
Well, as you all know, according to the Trump peace plan, it has two important points: no annexation of the West Bank and no displacement. And that's why we accepted the Trump peace plan, and it's very important to focus on that, and it's attached to the Security Council Resolution 2803. Egypt will save no efforts but in their homeland, and to help them, of course, to build their own state. There is no solution or sustainable security and stability for Israel or for the Middle East without the state. This is the only game in town. A part of that, all will be temporary solutions. And support Gaza with the humanitarian aid. 70% of all assistance entered into Gaza offered by the people of Egypt and the government of Egypt from all over the world. You know, we are talking about more than 600,000 tons of humanitarian and medical aid into Gaza. We will continue to do that. It's our responsibility, but again, Egypt is not going to govern Gaza, and no single country will govern Gaza, but only the Palestinians, they will govern themselves.
Thank you very much, Minister. Minister Espen, can I go back to my very first opening question about what do we need, or what would the one thing that you would like to see to make sure that we don't get into a situation of no war, no peace, that we see a freezing scenario? How do we avoid that type of conundrum if we want to get out of the mess that we're seeing in Gaza, and where you're seeing the very dire state of lives facing Gazans? What do we need to see happen over the next coming weeks?
Thank you, Comfort. First, I want to say that I agree with everything that my two colleagues, both Abdelati and Alvarez, just said. So I'm not going to say that again, just register that. But to your specific question, I think the number one answer is get the sequencing right and get these institutions into place. Because the 20-point plan, which we all supported because all of us were in Sharm el-Sheikh together and, you know, gave our imprimatur on this Trump plan, the plan says many of the right things, but it's not very clear what happens first and what happens next. Yes, there are phases, but that means that the different parties can always say, I will do my part, but only when he has done his part, and vice versa. That's a problem. So we need to work on the sequencing, and we need to get these these temporary government institutions, the International Security Force, and the Board of Peace in place this month, because it's very urgent. And you are so right, Comfort, because we are now in a very fragile ceasefire, and we can either go forward or backward. I don't think we can stay many more weeks in this situation. The alternative is back to war, or descent into total anarchy, or we move forward. And I think those are the key answers to that question. Get the sequencing right, get the institutions in place. And as Brother Abdelati very rightly said, they are temporary, and people need to know today that they are temporary and that they are on the path towards real Palestinian governance under the PA.
Can we just zoom in, because the sequencing issue is always a conundrum in any peace process, and you've been involved in various peace processes, and it's very true that it matters how you sort of weave things together as well. But let's zoom in on the International Stabilization Force. The minister put a spotlight on the role of Israel, but Israel is also seeking one issue around decommissioning disarmament. Now, short of using force, how else are you going to do that? And how do you begin to put a force together where you're asking people to fight? Who wants to put themselves, or which country is about to mandate its own forces to go into the kind of situation where, you know, you've got Hamas on one side and Israel on the other side, and the real demand in the room is around decommissioning? How do you begin to do that? What does sequencing look like with that reality as well?
So a week ago, I met the foreign minister of a large Muslim country who has said that they're ready to provide a large number of troops. But he very understandably said, what are the rules of engagement? What is the exact mandate? What are these troops going to do? Because I have to tell my people what they're going to prepare their troops for. And that answer is not very clear. Exactly as, are they actually going to try to go down to the tunnels and fight Hamas? Or are they going to work with a Palestinian temporary authority where Hamas will actually voluntarily hand in their weapons and demobilize, which they have said they're ready to do when the institutions are in place. So it's back to the sequencing issue. And I think, frankly, it's very unlikely that we will get any consensus on an international force that will do the job of physically disarming Hamas against their will. It has to be part of a broader understanding. And to the extent you need something like that, I think it has to be Palestinian. And that's a hard sell, but I think that is one of the questions that we need to clarify very soon in order to get anywhere here. And then the International Stabilization Force will be a peacekeeping force, overlooking, reporting, making sure that this progresses, but where the key actors have to be Palestinians, including that new transitional governance, and the police officers that have actually been trained in Egypt, ready to go in when time is right.
Thank you. I'll come back to ask you a further question, but actually let me. There's another question that I have at the top of my mind. This has very much been described as an American peace plan, and each of you have had a role to play in getting us to Sharm el-Sheikh as well. And I wanted to ask you specifically, Minister, about whether this plan itself, because it's seen as an American plan, whether that itself is a challenge in terms of the progress going forward in getting it to be internationally acceptable, or whether you think the fact that you've got a major player like the United States gives it the necessary leverage, strength that it requires to get it past the first two phases as well.
So, Comfort, my answer to that is, yes, it's an American plan, which is a good thing, because that's why this could be, President Trump could speak with a strong voice to Netanyahu that he had to accept this plan. So it needed to be an American plan, but it picks up key elements of an Arab plan, which Jose Manuel and I have been supporting, but the main actors are our regional friends, and this has been very much what Spain and Norway and Slovenia and Ireland saw, that we needed to link up to a very promising initiative among a number of Arab and Muslim countries to come forward with this element of this plan. So when we all met in New York a month or two before the ceasefire, we spelled out some more elements of this plan, and this is not identical to the Trump plan, but there are elements in the Trump plan that you can recognize from that plan. Could it have been better? Yes, it could be more specific on timelines and sequence, but it's much better than any realistic alternative that has been on the table in a manner that could be implemented. So I think there have been many contributors to getting us to where we are, but it was important that President Trump himself in person was convinced that there was something to build on from this idea that you can't just stop the war in Gaza and believe the problem is solved. There is a deeper problem. This is one of many wars. At best, this particular war in Gaza is over. There have been many. But the deeper underlying conflict is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and that is only beginning to be solved at best. And here is why we need to build this bridge from the immediate need of stopping this war and feeding people and getting the sort of key infrastructure in place in order to build a political solution which will take away the cause for new wars.
I mean, thank you. That's a really nice way to segue to Minister Manuel, because one of the roles that Saudi Arabia has been focused on is the notion of a two-state solutions, and the global alliance that you've been working with France and other countries of the global south to make sure that we don't lose sight of the original focus of the Arab Peace Initiative that your country has driven as well. Are the two compatible today? The Trump 20-point peace plan, the resolution that was signed by the Security Council, does that framework sit side by side very well with that global alliance for a two-state solution? Or do you think that it's now become a challenge? The reason I raise it is that there's a sense in which that original idea may have been watered down or become vaguer within the context of the 20-point peace plan.
Well, thank you, Comfort. And, I want to first start by thanking the State of Qatar and commending them for this very important forum, which is a demonstration and a testimony to Qatar's role in bringing stability and security not only to our part of the world, but the whole world at large. And thank you also for International Crisis Group for the great work that you've been doing. I want to correct one thing, and I want to say the Global Alliance for the Implementation of the Two-State Solution is an idea that came out after many different diplomatic efforts. Spain has led the way beforehand, and the Global Alliance is actually between Norway, Saudi Arabia, and the EU, and even that Saudi Arabia's partner in this as a chair of the Arab OIC. So it brings in a lot of partners into this. And I want to say that the Global Alliance has centered around the idea of implementation and around the fact that almost everyone in the international community agrees that the two-state solution is the only solution forward. So if that is so, then it is asking people what is it that they are going to do to bring this implementation and make it possible. You ask me, is this compatible with the 20-point peace plan? I would say yes, of course, because also the 20-point peace plan was something that Egypt to Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Indonesia, Pakistan, and Jordan and others have also played a very important role in shaping with the United States. It actually brings hope that there is a peace plan that has the President of the United States be committed to, and we all know that a leader-driven diplomacy is the best diplomacy and the most best way to ensure implementation, which is exactly brings us back to the Global Alliance and the effort that has been put there. And if you see that the 20-point plan does not only address the crisis that is happening in front of us, but it actually talks about Palestinian self-determination, and it talks about a political path, which again is very much aligned with the Global Alliance. We hope that moving forward, first, I think I want to also go back to say that I want to say that the most crucial thing avoid redefinition and moving, again, very important objectives that the plan laid forward. Whether it is the importance of sequencing or whether it is the importance to realize that, first of all, Gaza is not a case on its own. This is extremely important. Gaza is about the Palestinian conflict. It is not just about Gaza. So we have to be very, very careful about that. And if we talk about security, or if we talk about humanitarian access, or if we talk about the plight of moving from one stage to the other, we cannot do that in absence of the ultimate objective. And the ultimate objective is security for all. It is regional integration, which is embedded in the realization of a Palestinian state. If we don't have that in mind, then there is no plan in the world will be able to drive us not only from one stage to the next, but also to prevent another spiral of violence.
Can I, Minister Espen wants to come in, but I just want to ask you a further question. You seem to imply, or you are suggesting that there should be consequences for any of the actors who seeks to block the process. What kind of consequences are you suggesting?
Well, one important element which I have alluded to, which is we cannot be open to redefinition and renegotiation of what we have already agreed to, and also what was issued as a Security Council resolution that was passed and welcomed by all parties. So we cannot go back and redefine what we mean by ceasefire, what we mean even by disarmament, what we mean by a Palestinian-led process in governing Gaza, also what is implied in unification of Gaza and the West Bank, and the ultimate objective of the Palestinians' right to self-determination. We cannot be redefining these things back and forth and getting ourselves into a sidetrack that gets us into so many details about what, who, when, and we lose sight of the overall and the core of the conflict.
Yeah.
And I want to say that we have seen this movie before. We have seen this cycle before, although the last episode in Gaza was very devastating and maybe the most devastating, but we have arrived at this stage before where there is a war in Gaza, then there is an engagement by the international community, then there is a search for humanitarian assistance, and then political fatigue, and then we forget about it. But only that we could see another more violent cycle of violence erupt. And the idea which is central to this, if we do not ensure the security and the political aspiration of Palestinians being fulfilled, then there is no security for anyone, including Israel and including the rest of the region, but also the world at large.
Espen, I know you want to come in on that, and a question that I want from all four of you as well is to be very specific about what do we mean about linking Gaza and the West Bank together in practical terms, what that means within the context of this current plan. Espen, please.
No, I just want to say that what Dr. Manal Radwan just said is just so incredibly important. It's a 20-point plan. All the points matter. They are connected. It's a compromise between several inputs. It has been endorsed by the Security Council, and we had a very impressive display of top leaders in Sharm el-Sheikh saying that this is the plan, and 4 guarantors to look after that, including both the host country, Qatar, and Egypt, of course, and Turkey and the US. So it's very, very, very important that all these elements are implemented, because there will be people who would only want pieces of it, and there's a real risk that there will be a lot of attempts to try to say, I mean, I prefer point this, that, and 7, you know, whatever, but not the rest. And if that happens, the whole thing will unravel. And I just so strongly want to endorse what she just said, because this is the outcome of of fast but very sincere conversation of where we have to go. And point 19 of the 20-point plan is what points towards the long-term objective of a Palestinian state. It could have been clearer, but it's clear enough that it suggests where we are supposed to head. And I want to say one thing, that there are so many Western countries who say only if the PA reforms. Well, I'm all for reform, and I'm actually working with them on specific reforms every single day. But we cannot say that as you know, the right to self-determination is not dependent on whether you fulfill a reform. I mean, you cannot get it that way. It's the other way around. You shall be independent, and we will help you, and reform will take you faster to that road. That's 2 different things.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Can I ask the four of you, because as we're watching what is happening in Gaza, we're watching a very different acceleration of annexation happening in the West Bank, and you've all pointed to linking Gaza with the West Bank, but what does that mean in practical terms, especially vis-a-vis a messaging, enforcement, consequences towards Israel? Minister, let me start with you, because I know that you've often voiced your concern and asked for the European Union to take a stronger stance on Israel. And right now, I don't see how you get to link the two without addressing this conundrum that you've raised yourself.
For me, it's three things. The first one is to make clear that we will never recognize any type of annexation. That is completely out of question. That's as a principled position. The second one, in the short term, is very simple things, like who will be delivering the humanitarian aid and water, justice, police and security. All those things must be from channeling to training, to taking care of that under one single Palestinian Authority. Once again, let's not duplicate. That's the first way of bringing both of them together.
And you heard what Minister Espen said about this notion that you want a reformed PA, that idea that the European member states often push. You will take that message back to your other colleagues.
And I think that one thing is wrong. We are asking the Palestinian Authority to deliver as if we were talking about a European state. When we see that they are being all the time undermined, we see how the taxes that they should be getting are being withheld by Israel. So if we give them the means to be able to deliver, then we can hold them accountable. But first, I agree totally with Aspen, let them deliver. And at the end, for me, bringing both together is very simple. Is Gaza and the West Bank connected by a corridor with an exit to the sea and its capital in Jerusalem, in East Jerusalem, under one single authority. We start with very simple things, water, justice, police, security, and then the final horizon is very clear.
Thank you very much. Minister, please, over to you.
Well, again, I mean, the connectivity between Gaza and the West Bank is extremely important. We cannot speak about final solution. We cannot speak about stability in the region without, as I mentioned, having the Palestinian state. And Palestinian state means Gaza and the West Bank, all territories occupied on the 5th of June 1967. The situation in the West Bank is not, is even more worse than in Gaza. Every day you have attacks by the settlers to terrorize the civilians. They are pushing them from remote areas into heavily populated cities with one objective later on to displace them. And this is the same what they are trying to do in Gaza. So settlers' violence, also the confiscation of lands, settlement activities, this settlement, plan to which will divide the north of West Bank from the south, it will make the realization of the Palestinian state on the ground impossible. So we have to be careful also on what's happening in the West Bank. And again, as Espen mentioned, we have to deal with the Trump peace plan as an integral part, as one unit. It's been stipulated that withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza should be implemented within the second phase of the Trump peace plan. And this is very, very important. And without that, we cannot talk about stability in the region. Also, political horizon in the Trump peace plan, this is very, very important. It's not all about security measures, about ceasefire, about humanitarian and medical aid. It's more than that. Without creating hope for the people in Gaza and the West Bank, and without having a political horizon which will lead to the realization of the Palestinian state, I don't think that we will have stability. And one final issue with regard to the connectivity between Gaza and the West Bank is the Palestinian Authority. And this is very important. We have to empower the Palestinian Authority to be deployed in Gaza in order to ensure the unity and the integration between Gaza and the West Bank.
Thank you very much. We've got just over 2 minutes left, and I want to end with Manuel and then with Minister Espen as well. How do you avoid a situation, Manuel, where proposed peace, but one that reflects truly what Palestinians want? How does Saudi see its role in making sure that the peace that comes in is not one that is imposed from the outside, but it lives up to the expectations that you set?
Well, first of all, it needs to be Palestinian-led. The Palestinians need to be front and center. And that is very obvious from all the diplomatic efforts that we are trying to do, and the voice of the Palestinians that we want to carry over everywhere, including with the United States. But let me say one thing about reform, because I think your question is extremely important. Look, the Palestinians have been reforming for the past 30 years. And we have President Mahmoud Abbas had put a robust reform plan that he committed himself to, because this is good for the Palestinians. Saudi Arabia, of course, is committed, and we work on a daily basis with the PA to help in its reform plan. But what we need is actually to really get into a sustainable peace and security, and to end this conflict, and to implement President Trump's 20 peace plan, and to implement the Security Council resolution, is a reformed Israeli government. We have an Israeli government that opposes the two-state solution. We have an Israeli government that has officials continuously entice against Palestinians, against Arabs, against Muslims. We don't see that we have a partner for peace, not even a partner for a sustainable ceasefire. So that is the actual and the important reform that we are hoping to see.
I'm going to cut it off there, Espen. I was going to bring you in because the way in which you ended, I think, is already an important point, that you need a partner for peace on the other side. And that is part of the next sort of critical conundrum that we need to address when we think about all the lessons from all the way that all four of you have worked effectively as partners to get us to September, and now to get to the next going months. Espen, you're going to force me to give you the final word. Please go ahead. I'm not going to stop you.
But for exactly the reason that Manal mentioned, we have to take away the de facto veto that Israel has endured for decades.
Right.
They have a voice, but they cannot be the sole decider of what happens to a territory that they illegally occupy.
A perfect way to end our session. Thank you so much, all four of you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Ero, for guiding this discussion on Gaza. Thank you to all of your panelists as well. As I invite you to take your seats, a reminder that what we discussed here, this vital discussion, is one that strikes at the very heart, at the very core of our theme here at the Doha Forum this year. Transforming dialogue into concrete